You're listening to the Profit by Design podcast, episode 2.
I'm working on the business that hour and a half a day. I'm not working in the business anymore at all. Zero.
You work hard in your business. On the Profit by Design podcast, we ask the big question: what has your business done for you lately? I'm Dr. Sabrina Starling, the business psychologist and your co-host on the Profit by Design podcast. Weekly, my co-host Mike Bruno and I bring you tips, tools, and strategies from our own experiences and from the experiences of our guests who are entrepreneurial thought leaders and real-life entrepreneurs, all to support you in making intentionally profitable and sustainable business decisions to live the lifestyle you desire. Hey, Profit Designer. In just a moment, I'll be sitting down with my co-host, Mike Bruno, to interview him so you can get to know him. Mike's a lifelong entrepreneur, and he recently made a significant career pivot, and he had just a few months' time to get his 3 businesses running without his constant involvement. When he gets here, I'll be asking him to share with us how he made this choice to pivot, what impact it's had on him, and what surprises have come out of this. And I'm also going to ask him about his why for podcasting. Why is he so passionate about our Profit by Design podcast and our commitment to you, our profit designers? So, Mike, I'm ready to introduce you to the audience here, our profit designers, and I'm really excited to do this because I invited you, I think last year around this time, to do this podcast with me, and it's been a work in progress, and I think you have so much to contribute that other entrepreneurs can benefit from. And so I'm eager to get talking with you and have you share some of that. I want to start off with the fact that you have recently made an unexpected career pivot. That's pretty unusual, but it's actually allowed you to go further with your entrepreneurial endeavors. So do you want to start off by sharing some of that with our profit designers?
Sure, absolutely. So, I currently still own 3 companies: Contractor Business Solutions and Small Business Consulting Group, which are one and the same company, Stone Creek Builders, and also Aspen Development Partners, which is a house flipping company. I've been in the construction industry since 1990, so it's fairly ingrained in my entire being. And over the last several years, I've started to fine-tune Stone Creek Builders to really an optimal point where it pretty much runs itself for the most part. And it's been a work in progress in terms of identifying, every factor that an entrepreneur can possibly need to identify. I've had to work through identifying, the systems that work for my business model and the ideal clients and getting the right employees on board and, all those things that we struggle with on a daily basis. Also designing the optimal size of the company. But effectively, I've been able to step away from the day-to-day operations of the company. And my career pivot was really it wasn't a calculated decision, but an opportunity presented itself for me to join a very large construction company where the owners also own a development company. And I decided to pursue that opportunity and join the company. So I'm actually an employee, but I'm also an entrepreneur. So I know a lot of folks out there that work for somebody for, a period of time, and they have the entrepreneurial bug and they want to start a business. I kind of adapted to it the opposite way, where I've never really worked for anybody, aside for some small companies back in the day when I was a kid. But, for all intents and purposes, I've been self-employed for over 27 years, and I decided to make a jump and join a large company with, over 160 employees, a lot of rules and a lot of systems in place. So it's been really interesting.
Yes, that's quite a change. So How did you make a decision like that? Because I think we all as entrepreneurs can relate to that we're presented with opportunity frequently, and we have to choose which ones we pursue. So how did you make that choice?
We can probably talk for months and months on that whole that question. It's interesting. I guess for me, a lot of it relates to my definition of my journey and my success. And I've talked about this before, that creating the definition of success for you as the entrepreneur, as the employee, as the person, as the wife, father, husband, whatever it may be. It's very hard to sometimes map out your journey when you feel like there's no other way than what you're doing. And from my own personal experience, to a certain extent, and this is not a negative thing, but to a certain extent, I've somewhat felt a prisoner as an entrepreneur. And again, it's not a negative connotation. I'm just saying that because I've been an entrepreneur for so long, I felt like in some way, shape, or form that it was my only option, that I always had to have my own business, and I only had to do things a certain way. And if I had a construction company, I would never be able to step away from it. I would always have to remain embedded in the business. Until you force yourself to be removed from it, you're your own captor, I guess. You're capturing yourself and you're not letting yourself go.
So you're thinking, you had really boxed yourself in with your thinking. Correct.
Exactly. You and I have done a lot of work together over the last year or 2 years rather. And, your 4-week vacation concept, is on the forefront of a lot of entrepreneur's mind. How do I take off 4 weeks? How do I take off 3 weeks or even 2 weeks or 1 week without being dragged back into the business? And I can tell you that you can absolutely do it if you decide that you're going to do it, right? So I started designing my business to be able to take that 4-week vacation. I started designing my business, around Mike Michalowicz's new book, Clockwork, where there was self-sufficiency in all aspects of the business. Now, I designed it to take a 4-week vacation, although I can't take a 4-week vacation because now I'm an employee, right? But absolutely, the business is still running. We're, Stone Creek Builders has, a multitude of projects going on. I have a good group of assistants and, still full-time employees that work on the projects on a day-to-day basis that communicate with the clients. And I can tell you that because I am an employee of a much larger company, I cannot be reactive to the fires that come up or the fires that we as entrepreneurs think that we need to react to that come up on an hourly or, daily basis. I'm not able to check my personal cell phone every 5 minutes. I limit it to once or twice a day. And it's really, in an odd way, I've grown tremendously from it. I can't wait to share the system and some of the methods I use to basically get the company to be there. But also my employees have grown tremendously.
Are you saying that we make up these fires in our head that we put out all the time?
Yes, I think what you're asking me is, as entrepreneurs, do we make up the necessity to react to the fire? And I would say 99.9% yes.
Oh my goodness, that's big.
That's really the nugget, right? So I'm sure many people listening to this, probably as they're listening to it, their cell phones buzzing and going off like crazy with, an employee or a client or somebody, just wanting to monopolize their time, right? And just take advantage of their time. And we fight with it so hard emotionally, right? Because we feel like it's our business, we have to react. And it's my employee and I have to react. And a customer's texting me or emailing me, so I have to react to it immediately. And I think we undermine the very system that we try to build by doing those reactionary things.
Yes, there's so many good nuggets here. I want to hear more. Before we dig in further, let's take a break and hear from our sponsors. This episode of the Profit by Design podcast is proudly brought to you by Contractor Business Solutions, the Small Business Consulting Group, and Tap the Potential, the home of How to Hire the Best and the 4-Week Vacation Program. Visit our website at profitbydesignpodcast.com to learn more about our sponsors and to catch previous episodes of the podcast. And by the way, while you're there, be sure to check out the conversation between Mike and I that 95% of entrepreneurs never have. We blow up the dirtiest little secret in the entrepreneurial world. So something else that you said really caught my attention, because you started talking about the 4-week vacation. So you made that 4-week vacation pledge back in March, early March.
Correct.
Here we are, we're recording this mid-August, so like 5.5 months later. And you actually took this role that you have now, I think, 2 months ago?
Yep. Yeah. A little over 2 months ago.
Yeah. So you effectively had like 3 months, 2.5 months, or 3 months at the most to really get your businesses on the trajectory where they can function without your direct involvement so that you could be in the role that you're in currently.
Correct.
What are your thoughts about that time pressure and the importance of that moving you along on this journey?
Like anything, you have to make a commitment to do it. Once I committed to this opportunity, I didn't have a choice. So I couldn't procrastinate. I couldn't make up excuses for why the system wasn't working. It was absolutely critical that it was in place because, again, I have a job and an opportunity, and coming from an entrepreneurial background, I take it very seriously, and I refuse to do these other things during that time. So, and I knew that. I knew going into it that I had to have the systems in place. I had to set the expectations with clients that there was a different communication pipeline to go through. I had to set the expectation with my employees that there was different communication pipeline to go to. And, I'm not going to say that it's, completely seamless and everything's perfect, because it's not. And I'm currently making the choice to maintain all these things and juggle these things, which requires extra hours, so I do have to spend, about a half hour every morning aligning things. I do have to spend some time, late afternoon, early evening on the phone, touching base with people and working on some alignment. So, but it's not an everyday thing. So I guess the important thing to keep in mind there is I'm working on the business that hour and a half a day. I'm not working in the business anymore at all. Zero.
Wow. That's such a critical distinction. And I also, just knowing some about your journey, I want to say to our audience that you didn't just start in March working on the business. You'd been doing a lot already to position your business, and especially with your team and getting the right people on board and starting to put some of the systems in place. But what I really picked up on is how once you made that commitment and you said, I'm going forward in this direction, and this business is going to have to be able to run without my involvement the way I've been involved previously, that really started the shift. So it was you just making up your mind, essentially.
Correct. And I don't even know if I had the time to make up my mind. I took a leap, and yes, I did have to commit, right? But I didn't have much time to contemplate it. So it's been a journey, right? I think all of us as entrepreneurs, we're always looking to chip away at some of those problems that we have within the business. We're always looking for, a better way of doing business and to free up some of our time and, work with our employees better and create better culture and increase profitability and do all those things. And it is a journey. Things change and you constantly have to work on it. But once I just decided, you know what, I'm going to give this a whirl and I'm going to give it 110%, there was no second guessing anymore at that point. There was no head trash. There was no procrastination. Like I said before, it was just 100%. I'm committed. I'm doing it. There's no option. It has to work. And I also, from a self-affirmation perspective, that was my thing, right? This has to work. And, the journey is going to continue. So right now, the businesses are working. Everything's going good. We're going to have some challenges and things that happen along the way. But they're all good things to figure out. I am an entrepreneur through and through, so I don't even necessarily consider myself an employee. However, I do have to say, I do have thoughts sometimes of, did I abandon my entrepreneurial dream, or did I, did I take a step backwards, or, did I do something that affects anything? Because I think when you're an entrepreneur, you wear a badge, right? And you have a certain, badge of honor there that, a lot of us entrepreneurs understand that it's not easy. So entrepreneur to entrepreneur, there's a certain bond, right?
Yeah.
And the bond that we've created, with people at your retreat and, just other things where, entrepreneurs stick together and you grow together. And I still consider myself very much part of that entire realm. It's just, my journey is a little bit diversified. But it's still, I'm an entrepreneur. So even when I go into this big company, I'm looking at it not as, I'm an employee perspective. I'm looking at it 110%. I'm an entrepreneur working in this environment, and how could I make the environment and the company better by what I know and what I could add to the company.
Well, they're certainly lucky to have you, Mike, as one who writes about how to hire the best. I have to tell you guys that when Mike informed me that he'd taken this position, I thought, oh my gosh, they got the best A player out there. So, yeah, I think you're really hitting on something so important about how we define ourselves as entrepreneurs and as the owner of the business. And I know for myself that doing this 4-week vacation journey on my own in my business and really stepping out of being the owner and being Dr. Sabrina and Tap the Potential and all of that has created for me some existential crises that I've been sorting through. Like, who am I if I am not the owner of this business and growing this business? And especially if the business doesn't need me. And I'm really starting to think about it like it's kind of like that empty nest syndrome when our kids go off to college and we have to redefine ourselves. If we're not mom, if we're not dad, who are we? And I think it's a point of growth. And what I love about what you are sharing is how quickly you made the decision. Like, you knew intuitively it was the decision to make. And for people around you, it probably looked like, wow, that came out of the blue. What the heck? But what I'm hearing you speak to is that it was not what you set out to do on your journey. And if you had continued to define yourself as the entrepreneur, as the founder of Stone Creek Builders, and stayed in that box, you would have short-circuited an opportunity for yourself.
Correct.
And I also think in my experience, the different things that I take on, I think they're taking me in one direction, and oftentimes they take me to better things than I would have even envisioned for myself. So you set out for the 4-week vacation. You're not getting a 4-week vacation. You're getting something else that for you is the right thing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I think, like multiple people have said, before, that success is the journey, not the destination, and I think when if you set out, and want to partake in that journey, and if that journey is in alignment with your personal goals and, what you want your success to be, there's nothing wrong with doing anything in reverse or a certain way. Right. So there's, you and I talked about this a couple weeks ago, where, I was saying that, I'm the guy who does it in reverse, right? Like, a lot of people want to have a side hustle. They want to start a small business and have a side hustle when they're working for a company. I have 3 businesses that I morphed down to 3 side hustles and then went and started working for a company. So, it's in reverse, but, it's really good. Just everybody around, that's in my, the relationships that I have from a business perspective with the existing businesses that I have, clients, my coworkers at the new company, everybody, has embraced, what I'm doing, the journey and my goals. And it's been a really good experience.
That's awesome. So we're going to be wrapping up here, but I have one final question because it's really clear that you've been very thoughtful about your choices, especially in recent months because your time is so limited. So why podcasting? How did you decide, in the middle of all of this, I'm going to podcast?
Yeah, that's right. That's another thing we have going, right?
Yeah, another side hustle.
Like you mentioned before, you and I have been talking about this podcast for a long time. And, really it's, for me, the important thing is building relationships with our listeners and other business owners, and really just creating a community of experience. There's so much knowledge and experience out there among so many people. And I really love listening to other people. And I like hearing about the pitfalls and the hard times. And I love hearing about, all the good things and things that are happening in their lives personally and business wise. So for me, it was really something important for me, in my journey and my growth to just build our relationships and just really build this really important community around Profit by Design.
Yeah. And I love that. And our intention is really to have conversations that entrepreneurs typically aren't having and talk about the tough things. And I really think you and I sharing more of our own journeys as we bring on guests and we interview, we want to be hearing from our profit designers and our audience that it's not just you and I talking, that we're on our own journeys and we're learning, and we love to hear from the rest of you how you're relating to what we're sharing. Mike has shared with us some really personal information about how he's made these decisions and these choices in his life. And I'm certain that those of you listening out there are connecting with this, and different pieces of what he's said and what he's shared has resonated. So we'd really love to hear what your stories are around this.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
Thank you for spending time with us today. Join our conversation in the Profit by Design podcast Facebook group. Share your thoughts on today's episode, ask us questions, and let us know what you want to hear about next. Visit our website at profitbydesignpodcast.com to access resources from our sponsors and tools we've created for you. Subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening to right now. There's a subscribe button right there. Go ahead and hit it so that you always get a notification when we release a new episode. And finally, share our podcast with a friend if you know a friend who would enjoy it. Thanks again for listening.